Cyberpunk has a vast array of different hacks, guns, and melee weapons that you can use on a given playthrough. Something that you may not really consider when you're using melee weapons is some of them can be thrown. This is not really a weapon class that many are aware of or even use, so I figured I'd ask if you can beat Cyberpunk 2077 with only throwing weapons. I went ahead and picked the Corpo route for my main character. I'm not sure why. I think it's probably because it's one of the faster routes to start, in my opinion. Although I could be completely wrong on that. I didn't fact check myself whatsoever. Honestly, I probably am wrong on that. There's a lot of dialogue with the Corpo route that I kind of forgot about. So we're just going to pretend that I was correct and move on. Anyways, I went ahead and got through all of the introductory stuff, which luckily didn't have any combat, and it was time for the first little section with the scavs. Now, when I say throwing weapons, I of course mean throwing knives, but I'm also going to let myself use grenades for this, just because this first section would be really annoying if I had to wait for Jackie to kill absolutely everybody, which I'm really not wanting to sit around and do. Cyberpunk is already a long enough game for me to beat for a challenge run anyways, usually averaging about 15 to 20 hours for a given playthrough, so I'm going to use grenades. Now, grenades are technically a thrown weapon, so this is honestly completely fine for me to do. Also, something that I will mention is during this playthrough, you may notice if you've played Cyberpunk, there are certain segments that I'm kind of cutting out large parts of, and the main reason for this is because I do actually have some things that I'm not sure if they would get me demonetized, but I'm just going to be safe and not include them in the video, so that's why the first little segment with Sandra got cut out. I was just kind of worried about demonetization. As far as car segments go as well, I will have to use a pistol. I'm forced into this. I don't have a choice. I can't actually switch my weapon during this segment, and I can't use grenades, so pistols it is. There are a few different forced sections that I will have to deal with during the game, like when you wake up with Takamura for the first time in the landfill, doing the turret section with Pan Am, escaping Arasaka Tower. You have to use the pistols there as well against the drones. It's just something that I don't really have a choice about and I'm going to have to use. But now that I had actually started the game and I was back in my apartment, I went ahead and crafted some throwing knives. I got my car back from Jackie and headed off to deal with Vic's clinic and get some new upgrades, which was pretty self-explanatory. Nothing much to do here, just some more dialogue and some things that I have to get through, tutorial segments, all that stuff. Nothing too bad, nothing that involves the challenge really. I just sat through everything, sat with the conversation with Dex, and I kind of forgot how much dialogue is in Cyberpunk that's not really that skippable. It was at this point that I kind of forgot that I had a skip button for dialogue as well, which we're just gonna move on. Next thing was going and dealing with the first part of the heist quest, which is the pickup for the Flathead bot at the Maelstrom place. Now, originally, I wanted to just kind of do this peacefully, but I kind of forgot how much Royce pisses me off, so I went ahead and shot him in a cutscene, which is fine. It happened in a cutscene, therefore I'm counting it as not me. I don't actually think damage numbers or anything pop up, so as far as I'm concerned, it didn't count. Now, the throwing knives are honestly not that terrible of a weapon. They have a massive learning curve, I will say, though. I spent a lot of the beginning of the playthrough just kind of learning how to, actively use them. They're not really hard to use, it's just you kind of got to understand the arc and trying to line up headshots for the throwing knife perks and everything. It can be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but other than that, honestly, they're pretty solid as weapons as far as early game goes. I mean, headshots were dealing about 200 damage with the throwing knives on crits, which is pretty good to me, honestly. I thought it was doing pretty fantastic damage compared to other weapons that you can have at the start of the game. They do pretty good work compared to everything else. I mean, some of the pistols usually do maybe 15, 20 damage, so this is really damn good. Now, I am going to be upgrading the throwing knives and stuff if I come across better ones. I'm going to be upgrading iconics if I find any. I think there's 1 or 2 iconic throwing knives in the game, if I remember correctly. I know I got one of them for this playthrough. I can't remember if I got any more, but I'm pretty sure I only had 1 iconic throwing knife for the playthrough. It was one that you can buy from a merchant, so I went ahead and got that. But as far as everything else goes, this is not going to be a run where I'm restricted to only the common base rarity ones, which some people are probably going to assume that makes it easier on me, and that's kind of the point. I mean, I did a run of Cyberpunk in the DLC already with just common rarity weapons, which I'll put up in the top right corner for you guys to check out if you're interested in that. And that was a fun run. but I'm not really looking to do the same run again, just with knives this time. As far as Arasaka Tower goes, it was kind of concerning to begin with because I forgot that, I don't really have a weapon when I go in because we're required to leave our weapons in the vehicle. And I was kind of wondering how I was going to get through this section because I don't think I'm allowed to use grenades. But then I remembered that I can just do what I did at the start of the game and craft a throwing knife. So that's what I did. I think I made 2 to start with, and then I just started mowing through the guards with them. I could have done this section stealthily, but honestly, I didn't really care enough to. At this point, I was just kind of getting warmed up with the throwing knives, and I was really feeling the combat with them. I was doing pretty damn good with them. And honestly, throwing knives became one of my favorite weapons after this run. Like, I would genuinely recommend playing the game this way. I think using throwing knives and just throwing them is like one of the funnest aspects of the game, in my opinion. I think it's really, really interesting. I'm so glad that they changed how throwing weapons work with the 2.0 update. It's one of my favorite parts of it, and I honestly will probably do just a regular playthrough of the DLC with throwing knives at some point as well, so I'll probably make that a video at some point. Now, don't confuse this with me saying that these were easy. I definitely had some struggles later in the run with them, mostly the boss fights. But after all the stuff with Arasaka Tower, it was time for another car segment, which again, can't switch my weapon or anything. I was pretty much forced to do the drones with a pistol, so it's just a on-rails segment. Kind of the equivalent of a playable cutscene, to be honest, because, I can't switch weapons, can't open my inventory, can't do any of that during it, so there's not really much I can do. But after Jackie, unfortunately passed away, it was back to dealing with Dex, and of course getting shot in the head, which marks the actual start of the game. This is, of course, when I get another flashback segment, which is Johnny's segment. Again, I have absolutely no control over Johnny's segment, which of course, requires me to do things with an automatic turret, Johnny's pistol, stuff like that. There is nothing I can do here. It's not skippable. I can't change my weapons, nothing. So again, it's just going to be a segment that we don't count for the run because otherwise pretty much every weapon restricted run for this game would be absolutely impossible. You don't even get grenades for Johnny's segment. So you can't really even keep the challenge going, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. As Johnny, I of course got bullied by Adam Smasher and found out how Johnny got put into the engram and then woke up in the landfill. After this, I was of course having another on-rails segment in the car with Takamura, which meant of course I was going to be using the pistol again. Luckily, there's not another one of these for a long time. It's really only at the beginning. Like, I think there's 1 or 2 more in the entire game that are required, so you really don't have to worry too much about it. It just kind of sucks that basically every weapon restricted run for Cyberpunk is borderline impossible because they force you to use that kind of stuff during certain segments. But I mean, even Call of Duty campaigns and stuff have segments like that where you're kind of required to do things in the back of a moving vehicle or something. I had my first little interaction with Johnny, which went, about as you would expect it, with us trying to kill each other, and found out that he was just a figment of my imagination, which meant that I had to get rid of him. Once I woke up in my apartment, this is kind of where the game really begins, and where everything kind of starts to open up, and you can really just kind of access whatever you want. Of course, I'm going to be doing pretty much just main quests for this, so I headed to the diner to meet with Takamura so that I could start kicking off more of the main story. Had another little conversation with Johnny, and then continued on my way. I had to go meet with Judy, which was not too bad. It was mostly just some more dialogue and trying to find out where Evelyn is. I picked up a couple random fights here and there and just kind of spent some time killing some random people. Not really sure why. I don't really need experience or anything. I just was kind of bored and they were here, so I figured, yeah, let's murder them. I did stop by one of the shops to pick up, I believe it was a green rarity melee weapon, which I would use for a little while before switching over. I think the max I ever had on this run anyways was blue rarity, and one of my iconics I don't think I bothered upgrading either, so it just ended up staying as a blue. I did go and give this guy a non-lethal takedown in Embers because I felt like it didn't really violate the challenge, considering I didn't actually kill him. I don't know how to work that properly. There's not really a way for me to get a key card off of him otherwise, so unless I wanted to, just aggro the entire place, but I wanted to do it with stealth, so that's how I did it. When I made it to Finger's Clinic, I just kind of killed everybody that was out front. They aggravated me, so I made them all just stop existing, and then went and snuck around the building through the window. I beat the shit out of Fingers to figure out where Evelyn was, and then gave him a knife to the head because he's unethical. Is that unethical in itself? Probably. I had another boring brain dance section, which just gonna skip past, it's boring. Had a little conversation in the car on the ride with Judy, and then made it to the warehouse so that I could start taking out scavs to get Evelyn. I did most of this segment stealthy. I think I only aggroed them near the end, which is pretty good for me, considering normally I just kind of run in guns blazing for everything, so I was proud of myself for being stealthy for once. This build really does benefit from a lot of the stealth perks though, and there's actually an entire tree dedicated to throwing weapons after the 2.0 update with the perk revamp, which I think is absolutely fabulous. I think that's one of the coolest parts of the 2.0 update is the perk rework. We went ahead and rescued Evelyn, which I'm gonna skip over part of it just for possible demonetization stuff. I'm not sure if it's, not allowed, but I just want to be on the safe side. YouTube can be very finicky when it comes to monetizing things, and I'm just not going to take any chances. When I was heading to meet with Takamura again for the Oda meeting, I somehow just glitched into the water, and I was just kind of there for a few minutes, which, Cyberpunk. The meeting with Oda went pretty terrible because he wasn't going to help us, and then it was off to meet Wakako so that we could get the plans for the parade. Now, after this, I did all the, viewing of the plans, and then I kind of had a few different quests that I could do at this point, and kind of pick my route. So I decided that I was going to head over to the Afterlife to start dealing with Panam's questline, since I would have to do it at some point anyways. Her questline isn't really that hard or anything. I wasn't too worried about it. It was just more annoying. There's really only one segment of her quest that's difficult, and that's going to be the Kang Tao robots and stuff, which I wasn't entirely sure how the throwing knife would perform against robots. I didn't know if they had resistances or anything to melee. I've never really done melee weapons in a Cyberpunk playthrough before, so I just kind of spent some time killing random people on my way to the Afterlife so that I could talk to Rogue, and then it was time to deal with all of that bullshit with her and Panam, because they don't really like each other and blah blah blah, more dialogue. I'm just gonna skip over most of this and move on to when I actually went out and met with Panam. So, of course, I forgot that, I didn't have money for Rogue's quest. I forgot you had to pay for this part. So I had to actually go out and farm some bodies to get some guns to sell. Luckily, they really increased the price of weapons and everything in the 2.0 update, so you're not really scrambling for money as much as you used to, which is kind of nice. I mean, I think guns used to sell for like 200 or some shit, and now they sell for like triple that if they're lower rarity guns, which is just really nice. I mean, you can generally stack up money pretty quick in Cyberpunk as long as you're not like buying stuff every 5 minutes, which, some of us kind of have problems with. When I did the Ghost Town assault with Panam, it was not the way I wanted it to go. I tried to be stealthy, but it didn't really work out that way, so I just kind of sat behind a barricade and threw knives at everybody until they died. And then we had to go, of course, assault Nash and his goons to get her car back and make a point. This section was kind of annoying, mostly because I had this one dude that kept rebooting my optics and flashbanging me, but Nash himself wasn't too hard to take down as a boss. And after that, I took a little break from Panam's quest and went back to deal with the parade stuff with Takamura, which wasn't all that bad. For the most part, I had to just work on the next little segment, which was going to be assaulting the Arasaka Park. So, since I had to wait on both him and Panam, I figured why not go ahead and do the Grand Imperial Mall with Placide and the Voodoo Boys. I absolutely hate the Voodoo Boys. They're like one of my least favorite factions in the game. They're just kind of uppity snobs, so I kind of just murder them whenever I get a chance. And this playthrough was not really going to be any different. I killed some people on the way over to the mall, and then I did try to stealth part of the mall, but, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes I get detected. Some of the enemies here are kind of tanky, and it's really hard to just double them down before they notice me. But I did my best, you know. I got through some of it stealthily, and then the main, you know, room of the mall where you're supposed to do things stealthily, I failed, of course. But, you know, in here was probably one of the harder segments of the game, just because there's so many enemies and there's just so much going on at once. I also did decide to fight the big Sasquatch sledgehammer lady, which I thought was gonna suck, but she glitched out and just did whatever this is, so the fight became pretty easy. I still have no clue what happened there. I don't really try to reason with anything with Cyberpunk. I just kind of pretend that it doesn't happen. It's like a Bethesda game, man. You just gotta kind of just let it happen and leave it at that. Since the Voodoo Boys had obviously pissed me off at this point, I figured I would probably murder them after I was done with their section, so it was time to head back to the hotel so that I could meet with Brigitte. This was just a bit more dialogue, and then of course going down to the basement where I would get in the bath so that I could deal with hopefully going to the Black Wall and finding Alt, which I would need to get Johnny out of my head. I did the casual ice bucket challenge, and then of course it was time for more flashbacks from Johnny. Now again, reminding you guys, this is a segment where I have absolutely no control over it, and I have to use, you know, the weapon that I have. I kind of got bullied whenever I tried to kill these guys with Johnny because I got stabbed in the back, which is unfair. They were not allowed to do that. I'm supposed to be the one using melee weapons. Honestly, I kind of wish there was a throwable, like, arm mod with the cyberware, you know? Like, maybe I could just, like, take off my hand and fucking just yeet it at somebody. Maybe a rocket hand. Not like a hand that fires a rocket launcher, but like a rocket-propelled hand. You know what I'm saying? That is a very stupid idea, but I don't care. Anyways, moving on. I did all the Black Wall stuff and Johnny's segment, and then I went ahead and just murdered the Voodoo Boys. This honestly was kind of annoying, but they all bunched up really nicely right together, so I just kind of threw some grenades at them. And then I forgot that Placide is actually a boss fight, which was just depressingly easy. He went down in like a minute, and I had another little heart-to-heart talk with Johnny so that we could get on the same page, and got the call from Songbird for the DLC. Now, I'm not actually doing the DLC on this run. If you guys like this video, I may consider doing the DLC with the throwing knives. I think I would like to, but I'll see if you guys want more, Cyberpunk and stuff on the channel first. I'll see how we do on this and everything. I've got some plans in the future for some non-Fallout related content, which I haven't done much of recently. I generally stick mostly to Bethesda games. Every now and then I'll do Skyrim and stuff, but for the most part I stick to Fallout. It's just, what I enjoy playing. And I just figure, that's kind of what I've built my channel around so far. So I don't want to start doing videos that you guys didn't sign up for, I don't know if you guys necessarily signed up for Fallout challenge runs or if you signed up for challenge runs in general. So feel free to suggest, non-Fallout related challenge runs. I'm always open to ideas. I always like hearing what you guys come up with to do. But anyways, I assaulted the Arasaka Industrial Park, which went swimmingly. I didn't have any issues and I was able to stealth through the entire thing. And then I went to go do some more stuff with Pan Am. This is, of course, going to be the section where I have to use the turret, which, unavoidable again. But I'm fairly certain this is the last unavoidable, on-rails segment in the game that isn't, a Johnny's flashback segment. I think I have one more flashback with Johnny. I don't remember, honestly. See, everything I did up until the Kangtao convoy with Mitch, I recorded in December of 2023. And then everything after the Kangtao convoy with Mitch, I did earlier this week in June of 2024, in case you're watching this video in the future and you need reference for timetables. A lot of this video was done prior to this month, just because I had a lot of stuff going on last year and I just ended up not really finishing this video and just working on easier videos or videos that wouldn't take as much time to record. So a lot of the beginning of this run, which is up until this point, this is 2 2/3 of the video, I don't remember much of doing it, so I just kind of had to wing it on what I was planning at the time to explain to you guys in the commentary. But moving forward, this is all stuff that's fresh on my mind since I just got done doing it. So I actually snuffed it a couple times here at this segment. I kind of forgot that maybe rushing headfirst in with throwing knives wasn't the best idea because I didn't really remember how to play this run. So I had to kind of remember how to actually use my weapons and everything and try to beat people, but this segment wasn't all that bad. Just a few small deaths here and there. Honestly, this run wasn't too terrible on the deaths. I do have something planned later in the run that ends up killing me multiple times, but we'll get to that later. I did have another bit of a, seizure with Johnny and had to sit down and have another talk about him blowing up corporations and then do some side gigs while I waited on Takamura to get ready for, of course, taking care of the parade. The parade is not really a hard segment. The only thing I was concerned about for the parade was going to be the boss fight with Oda, which we'll get to here shortly. But in the meantime, I just started doing some side gigs and murdering people so that I could restock up on money and everything in case I found more knives to buy. I believe at this point everything that I had was green, but other than that, I was just looking for upgrades at any point, really. I got to the little night market and went ahead and got ready to assault the parade, and this really wasn't that bad. I mean, this is a stealth segment, and I'm pretty much literally set up for stealth to the best of my ability right now. I did miss the occasional jump here and there, which caused some issues, but other than that, this segment went pretty clean up until I got right to the end, which was going to be the boss fight with Oda. So I was slightly concerned for this segment because I remember Oda being pretty challenging and him being able to dodge, bullets and shit pretty well last time I did this, so I was wondering how he would fare against throwing knives. And honestly, once I kind of got his patterns down and everything, and I was able to stun him and stuff, I was doing some pretty good damage. I actually ended up switching to fire grenades for this segment because the little debuff would mark him in case he went invisible, and I killed him in style with a finisher, but of course left him alive for Takamura. I did take a perk in my throwing skill tree that allows me to do finishers on enemies, and I don't know if that technically counts as not being a throwing kill because I'm still I still have to throw my knife to get the ability to do a finisher, but in my mind I counted it. I figured it was fine because I still had to throw my knife in order to be able to actually do the finisher, and it's basically just an animation, so we're just gonna do it for the sake of me mixing stuff up for the run. I went ahead and rescued Takamura at the hotel. The game is actually kind of hiding the fact that you can do that from you. Some people don't know that you actually have the ability to rescue him if you ignore the main objective, which I did because I like to keep Takamura alive. He's one of my favorite characters. And after that, I had a meeting with the doll, which was going to be Hanako, telling me that she would help me, blow up Arasaka and get her brother punished. So after this, I had another little brush with death and had one more heart-to-heart with Johnny talking about the military and everything. And it was time to let Johnny take the reins a little bit so that I could do a few side quests because I had a specific ending that I wanted to do, which required me to do some work as Johnny. So normally you can go to Arasaka Tower with Rogue, or you can go do it with the Aldecaldos and Pan Am. There's a few different routes you can take it here at the end. The route I'm going to be going for, however, is the Suicide Rush with you and Johnny, because it's probably the hardest way to end the game. So the way it works is you're actually meant to take and just rush Arasaka Tower with no help from anybody else, but if you die, it ends the game. If you die, it is the end. I wasn't obviously going to accept that as an actual ending, even though it is an ending for V to die at Arasaka Tower. I was going to do it as resetting until I, of course, got through Arasaka Tower and didn't have any help, because I figured it was going to be the hardest way for me to actually give myself a challenge for the ending. I don't think, doing it with NPCs and everything there is very hard, especially because they can draw aggro, they can damage enemies, all of this. So I got through everything that I needed to with Johnny, got to the last little segment where I'm supposed to make my decision, and talk to Johnny about it. And the thing that you have to do in order to unlock this is you have to pick very specific dialogue on the last side quest that we just did, and then you have to sit on this screen for about 5 minutes. And then Johnny basically just says, fuck it, let's do it. And then you both just rush Arasaka Tower by yourselves. So this was definitely underestimated for me on how difficult it was going to be. I haven't actually done this ending before, especially not with the 2.0 update where they increased a lot of the difficulty of boss fights and stuff. And I ended up having to deal with 2 Arasaka mechs among a whole lot of enemies in one section. The mechs kill me fairly quickly, the enemies kill me fairly quickly, they're all Arasaka elites, and for this entire quest, your max health is lowered slowly throughout the quest until you're at about half of your actual max HP total. So there are sections in this quest where you can just straight get one shot by enemies. And I was playing on hard this entire time. That is what I had my difficulty set to. I ended up having to just lower it to normal to actually get through this segment. I spent about an hour trying to get through it on hard with like 7 or 8 different attempts, and I couldn't even make it down the elevator. So I lowered it to normal and then started working my way down the elevator. And this is honestly just a lot of fighting. There are a ridiculous amount of enemies here. Like, I feel like I probably killed more people down here than I did in half of my playthrough. There was probably well over 150, 200 Arasaka elites that I ended up killing down here. Now comes the challenging part for this. The Atom Smasher boss fight, which has been entirely reworked with 2.0 and is something that is definitely terrifying. I didn't expect this motherfucker to be as fast as he was, bro. When I tell you I was absolutely terrified hearing him just thunk, thunk, thunk running at me like 2 feet behind me, and I barely had time to throw knives at him, and each knife was doing maybe 0.5% of his health bar. Yeah, this fight was rough. Most of his attacks would almost one-shot me, which meant that I basically had to be very careful about my healing items. I had to make sure that I was never without at least one, just in case. And it was like 25 straight minutes of me just chipping away at his HP before I finally got him. So for the ending, I actually decided to just let Johnny have V's body. It is, again, an ending I've never personally done in all of my Cyberpunk playthroughs, and honestly, it's probably one of the most emotional endings in the game. It is very fucking depressing. It is really sad watching Johnny just have so much guilt over taking V's body and trying to leave his friend behind and everything. But with that, I did beat Cyberpunk 2077 with only throwing weapons. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions, please go ahead and leave them down in the comments below. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing the channel support and everything. It's been great. You guys have been killing it on the views, the subs, everything lately. You guys have been doing absolutely wonderful, and I'm very thankful for all you guys helping me make, my dream of doing content a reality. But as always, lads, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I've got some other projects in the work. I'm gonna try to have a more consistent upload schedule. I know I've been kind of lacking the last couple months, but I should be back to normal pretty shortly. Thank you guys all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider dropping a sub. Thank you.